The formula for simple interest, where P is the principal, R is the interest rate, and T is the time, is I equals PRT. Solve for T. This happened. This was on our last test. We had lots of people get one like this wrong, okay? So if I'm trying to get T by itself, let's change our color up here. So I'm trying to get T by itself. I want to move everything away from T. So PRT means P times R times T. The opposite of multiplication is to divide. So I'm going to leave the T, divide by the other stuff. So P and R over here. P cancels, R cancels. I'm left with T equals I over PR. That's my final answer. On 14, remember whenever you're plugging this in, we don't use spaces, keep it all together, and we would have plugged it in as I divided by PR equals T. You could also plug it in as T equals I divided by PR. You should keep the case the same for the letters as what you do, or as what they give it to you. I had a couple people who didn't do that. I let it slide, but there are going to be times where you have capital A and lowercase a in the same formula, things like that. You need to make sure that you're not changing the cases because they don't mean the same thing, okay? On 14, it wants us to simplify this. So the first thing you might think is combine like terms, which is good, but I have these parentheses, and I can't combine like terms when I have parentheses in the expression. So to get rid of them, I'm going to do what this is telling me to do. 8 touching those parentheses means I need to distribute and multiply. So I have 4x to the 5th, just comes straight down. Positive times a positive gives me a positive. 8 times 7 is 56. X to the 5th doesn't change. Positive times a negative gives me a negative. 8 times 3 is 24. B to the 4th doesn't change. Now I have x to the 5th and x to the 5th. Those are going to be like terms. So I have 4x to the 5th plus 56x to the 5th gives me 60x to the 5th. And this part comes straight down. Still part of the answer. Okay. Number 15, simplify. We've been working on these a lot in class, okay? I want to have only one base or one variable represented in this term. So what I want to do is combine my A's and combine my B's. Remember, I also don't want any negatives, okay? So whenever I simplify, if I end up with a negative, I need to make it positive. So the first thing I'm going to look at is my A's. I have -3 and 7. I always want to move the smaller one. So I'm going to move the -3. And when I do that, I'm bringing it down here. So it's instead of negative, when I move it across the fraction bar, it becomes +3. So since I moved it to the denominator, I have A to the 10th on the bottom now. Then my B's, I want to move the smaller one, so I have 4 and 8. The smaller one is 4. So I move it down. It was positive, now it becomes a -4. So B's on the bottom. 8 minus 4 is 4. And then the last thing I have is that C, which was positive, so I'm just going to leave it there. And I don't have anything represented here. I have to have something represented here. I have to show that understood 1. This is my final answer. On 16, it says, what is the y-intercept for this? I'm going to talk about both intercepts. Whenever we do intercepts, I want your first thought to be t-chart, plugging in a 0 for an x and a 0 for a y, so I can find the intercepts. Now, the y-intercept, remember, is where we are solving for y. So I'm looking for this ordered pair. Okay, this ordered pair should be, my answer. Okay, so I'm going to just do what it says, 0 for x. So I have 4, I have 4 times 0 plus 2y equals 2. That will cancel out. So I have 2y equals 2. Divide by 2 on both sides. So y is equal to 1. So your y-intercept is 0, 1. Or you could just say y equals 1 because that's where it hits. But typically I like to see this ordered pair so that I know that you understand what we're talking about. Okay, you can check for the other one by plugging in 0 for y, for your x-intercept. So 4x plus 2 times 0 is equal to 2. Those would cancel. 4x equals 2. Divide by 4 on both sides. X would be equal to 1/2. Okay, so that would be your x-intercept.